Something small happened to you recently. Maybe it was a comment, a look, a message that landed in a way it was not supposed to. Maybe it was nothing dramatic, just a moment that felt slightly off. And right now, without even trying, some version of that moment is still inside your head. But something genuinely good happened around the same time. Something warm, something real. And if I asked you to feel it right now, to actually feel it the way you still feel that other thing, you cannot quite get there. That is not weakness. That is not overthinking. That is not you being negative. That is a program running in the background of your mind that you never installed, never chose, and almost certainly never knew was there. And it is shaping everything. How you remember people, how you make decisions, how you speak to yourself at night, and how you move through the world. What I am about to show you is not a concept. It is a mirror. Your brain was never designed to make you happy. It was designed to keep you alive. And those two things, for most of human history, had very little to do with each other. For hundreds of thousands of years, the single most important thing your brain had to do was simple. Do not die today. And in that world, a world of physical threat, genuine scarcity, and very real predators, the stakes of missing a danger were incomparable to the stakes of missing something pleasant. Think about the logic. You walk through the forest, you hear a sound. If you assume it is nothing and it turns out to be a predator, you are gone. But if you panic, sprint, drop everything, and it turns out to be the wind, you lost a few minutes and felt a little foolish. And you lived. Your brain learned that lesson so thoroughly that it rewired itself around it. That asymmetry, where bad outcomes cost infinitely more than good ones, became the core architecture of human attention. The brain began allocating more processing power, more emotional weight, and more long-term memory storage to negative information than to positive. Not because the world is terrible, but because the cost of ignoring danger always outweighed the cost of overreacting to it. This is negativity bias, and the reason it matters is not that it made sense once, it is that it is still running, right now. In a world of Wi-Fi and grocery stores and abstract social threats, the brain cannot tell the difference. Here is where it starts showing up in ways most people have never connected to a deeper pattern. Think about the last time someone criticized something you did. Not attacked you, just offered a correction. Something small, maybe even constructive. And now think about how long you carried it. The average person can receive 20 genuine compliments in a day and still feel the shape of one careless remark hours later. Research in psychology consistently shows that negative social information carries somewhere between 2 and 5 times the emotional weight of equivalent positive information. This is not metaphorical. The neural pathways that process threat, rejection, and loss are faster, more automatic, and deeper than those processing reward and connection. Negative events get encoded into memory with higher resolution, more detail, more emotional charge, and they get retrieved more easily because your brain flagged them as important the moment they happened. Good experiences, by contrast, tend to pass through like light through glass. They are real, they matter, but unless you consciously hold them, they leave less of a fingerprint. And in relationships, this creates a very specific and very quiet kind of erosion. One difficult conversation can feel heavier than months of warmth. A critical tone can echo long after the actual words are forgotten. You might not even be able to explain why you feel slightly more guarded around someone, but negativity bias has already done its accounting. It tallied that one hard moment at 3 times the value of every easy, beautiful evening combined. The damage is almost never dramatic. It is cumulative, invisible, and almost always underestimated by both people in the room. What most people miss is that the brain is not trying to protect the relationship. It is trying to protect you. And those are 2 very different assignments. But here is the part that gets even more interesting. Because negativity bias does not stay in relationships. It follows you into every single decision you make. Behavioral economists have a name for one version of this: loss aversion. The pain of losing something is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the same thing. Lose $100, you feel it sharply, viscerally, for the rest of the day. Find $100, it is a pleasant surprise, and then it fades. This single asymmetry explains an enormous amount of human behavior that otherwise seems irrational. It explains why people stay in jobs that are slowly draining them, because leaving means accepting a loss of income, of certainty, of familiar identity. It explains why they hold on to relationships that are clearly wrong, because the brain treats breaking up as a kind of bereavement, even when staying is the actual loss. It explains why someone will work harder to keep what they have than to gain something equally valuable. Psychologically, we are not rational calculators. We are loss avoiders wearing the costume of rational calculators. And the people who understand this have been using it on you for decades. Why do negative headlines pull you in faster than positive ones? Why does a message that says, "Stop doing this to your health," land harder than one that says, "Start doing this"? Why do fear-based political campaigns consistently outperform optimistic ones? It is not manipulation in a cynical sense. It is leverage. They are activating a pattern that already exists in your nervous system and pointing it toward whatever they need your attention on. The media does not just report the world. It selects for the version of the world your negativity bias finds hardest to look away from. Once you see that clearly, once you understand you are not consuming the news, but being consumed by it, you can never scroll the same way again. Now here is the layer most people never reach. Because negativity bias does not only shape how you see the world, it shapes how you see yourself. Think about the internal monologue most people carry through an ordinary day. The quiet commentary running in the background, judging, reviewing, second-guessing, predicting the worst version of what might happen next. For most people, that voice tilts negative almost automatically. You leave a conversation and your brain goes straight to the thing you said wrong, not the 3 times you were sharp, kind, or perceptive. You do something generous and your mind moves past it in seconds. You make a small mistake and you find yourself mentally replaying it with the focus and detail of a slow-motion highlight reel, sometimes for days. Most people have never stopped to question this. They assume that voice is simply reality. that the self-critical narrator is somehow more accurate or more honest than the quieter voice that occasionally offers a kinder interpretation. It is not. It is louder. That is all. And your brain has learned to trust volume as a proxy for truth. Here is what that cost you over time. Not just mood, not just confidence. It cost you your relationship with your own experience. It makes positive things feel fragile and accidental, like flukes you should not count on. It makes negative things feel permanent and defining, like evidence of something true about you. None of that is an accurate picture of reality. It is negativity bias with a front row seat to your inner life. So what do you actually do with this? Because understanding a bias and actually shifting its grip on you are two completely different problems. The first thing to understand: you cannot willpower your way out of negativity bias. It is not a thought pattern you can simply correct with enough self-awareness. It is a neurological default, which means it responds to practice, not to argument. What psychologists call positive neuroplasticity offers a precise answer. The brain can be gradually retrained, not to ignore threat, but to give positive experience equal footing in how it gets encoded. The key is something called savoring. Most people let a good moment pass through their awareness in 2 or 3 seconds. Research suggests the brain needs closer to 15 to 20 full seconds of conscious, deliberate attention on a positive experience before it begins to encode it with real depth, the kind of depth that changes how you experience reality over time. You are not being told to be more positive. You are being told to be more precise, to stay in a good moment long enough for your brain to actually archive it. Most people let bad experiences marinate for hours, while good ones expire in seconds. Reverse that ratio, even slightly, and over time you are not just managing your mood. You are changing the architecture of how your mind processes being alive. The last thing I want you to consider is this. Negativity bias does not stay inside you. It radiates outward. One person in a social environment who is chronically threat-focused will pull the entire room into a lower state, not through conscious influence, but because human nervous systems are wired to mirror and absorb the emotional signals of people around them. If someone near you is running on high alert, your system picks it up and begins calibrating to match. This is why emotional environment matters more than most people are willing to admit. You are not just absorbing information from the people in your life. You are absorbing states. You are absorbing patterns of attention. And people who move through the world with genuine groundedness, people who do not spike at every perceived threat, who are not perpetually scanning for what could go wrong, become quietly, powerfully magnetic. Not because they seem perfectly happy, but because your nervous system registers them as safe, as someone around whom the alarm does not have to be running. That quality, real and unshakable steadiness, is one of the most rare things a human can develop. And it begins not with positive thinking, but with understanding why the alarm is running in the first place. Here is what I want to leave you with. Your brain is not broken. It is ancient. It is running software written for a world that no longer exists. A world where every threat was immediate, physical, visible, and final. You are living in a world of invisible pressures, digital noise, social complexity, and constant low-grade stimulation. And your brain is applying the same survival logic it always has. That mismatch is the source of more quiet human suffering than most people ever trace back to its origin. But here is the shift. When you understand that your negativity bias is not your personality, that it is a layer beneath your personality, you stop fighting yourself. You stop assuming the loudest thought is the most honest one. You stop letting one difficult moment erase weeks of evidence that your life is, in many ways, good. You do not become blind to danger. You become less enslaved by the ghost of it. And that is not a small shift. That is the difference between a life quietly governed by old fear and a life that is genuinely, deliberately, consciously chosen. Your brain prefers bad news. But the moment you see that clearly, the moment you know it is happening, you become something your brain never expected. Someone who gets to choose. Here is something worth noticing right now. If you made it this far, part of your brain was tracking what you might miss if you stopped watching. That is negativity bias working in your favor for once. The fear of missing something important is one of the most powerful drivers of human attention, and we just spent the last several minutes explaining exactly why. So let me use that intentionally. If this video shifted something in how you see yourself or the people around you, subscribe to The Hidden Mind, because the next video might be the one that changes the most important thing. And your brain, being the threat-sensitive instrument it is, will not want to take that risk. The like button matters too, not just for the algorithm, but because this is one of those moments negativity bias almost never gets around to acknowledging that something was worth your time and worth saying so. The mind is hiding things from you constantly. This channel exists to find them.